Harry's Wife, Part 100.12. The Cut. Salt and pepper. Or, if I were Scottish, salt and pepper. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, continuing my highlighted observations of the recent Cut interview with Harry's wife, which desperately needed the letter N inserting into the title. Nevertheless, if you can stand it, let's dive into the self-congratulatory bilge and learn more about her narcissism. Previously, of course, talk was being made about the absence of output from both Spotify and Netflix, and the interview smashes apparently rumours of a reality show. Harry's wife explains there's a difference between a historical documentary and a reality docuseries. The piece of my life I haven't been able to share, that people haven't been able to see, is our love story, she says. Well, I'm not really interested in learning about how you've been tromboning old ginger bollocks, nor learning about the seduction. My valuable viewers already know you're not going to tell us anything new. You put on a dab of his dead mum's perfume, decided that you wanted a rich white man who was somewhat famous, and using his vulnerabilities against him, and of course, offering lots of spicy poontang to ensnare him, you seduced him, using the assertion of control in a benign fashion that all narcissists would use when they're looking to ensnare somebody as an intimate partner. You pretended to take an interest in him, although you believed it was genuine. You flattered him. You exhibited false compassion, although you will have thought that it was real. You will have been overly tactile with him, perhaps giving those pink pods a little tickle under the table at which you were sat, making eyes at him, being flirtatious. You'll have mirrored his interests. You'll have expressed a desire to be involved in the things that he was, feigning enviro credentials and wanting to care for animals, etc. You'd have said, "Wow, me too," repeatedly when he explained that he enjoyed throwing Smarties up into the air and catching them in his open mouth and so forth. You will have also expressed your delight at using felt-tip pens to do some colouring in, and then produced a pack of crayons, which, of course, you will have known about Harry's love for them, and produced a new set for him to sit and run under his nose, inhaling deeply that smell of new crayons. The seduction is as per that which a narcissist would undertake, and that is what has happened. Of course, Harry's wife believes that she hasn't been able to share this information, although she shared so much about her life so far. And isn't it the case, of course, through that absolute piece of turd writing, Finding Dollars and Funding Freedom, that, which was also Harry's wife's diary, we've already been told about how they met and how they got together to then apparently find freedom. So once again, her narcissism forgets that she's put all of this out there, and she thinks that she's got something new and interesting to tell everybody. Wow. Guess what? Woman meets man, they shag, they form a relationship. Never happened before, has it, Harry's wife? Never likely to happen again. Once again, this is Harry's wife's deluded nature of her narcissism telling her that she's the only girl in the world to have met a man, supposedly fallen in love with him, jiggled his private parts around, made him feel good, and then formed a relationship. She thinks it's a love story. Everything about her is a film, a story, chapters, narratives, because she believes that she's so important. Of course, what she's actually telling us is so much of her life is an utter fiction. The piece of my life I haven't been able to share, that people haven't been able to see, is our love story, she says. Then quotes what she says was the end of a speech she gave at her wedding, in which she took comfort in the resounding knowledge that, above all, love wins. Again, love doesn't always win. Bullets and machetes often win. Money wins. But of course, this idea that taps into the empathic ideal that love can conquer all is part of the narcissistic narrative that is woven to ensnare people. And she, of course, does this instinctively. She adds, I hope that is the sentiment that people feel when they see any of the content or the projects that we are working on. No, most people will laugh at what you're doing, think that you're a grifter, and largely think, what a load of fucking rubbish. The interviewer asks whether what they're doing is a documentary about their love story. And Harry's wife says, I don't read any press, so I don't know what's confirmed. Of course, we know that's nonsense. We know from what Tom Bauer unearthed that she does. And of course, her narcissism drives her to need to know. Her narcissism drives her to want to find out what's going on. It has to do that because she needs information. Because information grants control. There then comes a rather creepy part, which the interviewer relays as follows. Your eye contact is good, she says suddenly. You're like looking into my soul. I stammer out an apology. I feel it. It's good. I'm like so excited to talk. Here's the use of the narcissistic stare, but in reverse by suggesting that she is looking into Harry's wife's soul. That is done as a form of provocation to make the interviewer feel uncomfortable, and her response of stammering out an apology provides Harry's wife with fuel and demonstrates that she continues to be under control. The next section relates to her bit where she was born and where she was bred and all that kind of jazz, and she states, Harry's wife launches into a little story. Right now we are trying to teach Archie his manners. We always tell him, manners make the man. Manners, 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 manners. Boring. In one of those lessons, Harry's wife remembered something she'd learned at a young age from a friend's mom. Salt and pepper are always passed together. She said, you never move one without the other. That's me and Harry. We're like salt and pepper. We always move together. Here, she doesn't realize just how ridiculous she sounds. Of course, this demonstrates the behaviors that she engages in by talking about the fact that they always move together. She thinks that that sounds romantic. She thinks that that sounds lovely. She thinks that that sounds cute. But it doesn't. To anybody with functioning brain cells, it comes across as creepy, predatory, controlling. Fact is, they always do move together because when she applies the electric cattle prod to the pink pods, he jumps. When she yanks on the chain, he follows. When she steers him with a hand on the back, he goes. When she grabs at him with the grip of doom, he complies. But referencing as being like salt and pepper is objectification, of course, of Harry, and she just sees him as a little pepper pot to be picked up and pulled around alongside her saltiness. The interviewer then talks about how Archie went to a birthday party and how Harry plays polo, and then some guff from a friend talking about how they want to have such a natural relationship. It's all rather dull. Talks about the cost of renovations. And then, of course, the fact that they had returned to their former residence at Frogmore Cottage during the Platinum Jubilee. Picking that up, the interview states, how did it get so hard? She had tried to play royal. I was an actress, she says. My entire job was, tell me where to stand, tell me what to say, tell me how to say it, tell me what to wear, and I'll do it. And I'll show up early, and I'll probably bake something for the crew. Every movie about an American woman who ends up becoming a princess has a pivotal scene in which she thinks she's doing the job correctly, just by being herself. But then some older royal gives her a speech about duty and decorum. I cite specifically The Prince and Me. She hasn't seen it. Yeah, that would have been really helpful. That would have been a very key tutorial to have had in advance of all of this, she says, not quite sarcastically, but the delivery is a sentence with a steel rod in it. By her own analysis, her problems stemmed from her being an American, not necessarily a black American, she explains. Her desire to ask a lot of questions and never be involved with something she couldn't normally have her hands on seems to violate an unspoken social norm. That, of course, is how her narcissism causes her to see it. It's how her narcissism causes her to think, oh, it was about me being American. Now, be under no doubt, if she were not a narcissist, the fact that she's grown up in a different culture would lead to some culture clashes with being in Britain and also joining the royal family. So there would have been some friction, but it wouldn't have been to the extent that which she has experienced, because the real friction that she experiences is driven by her narcissism, whereby all of the things that she can't do because of protocol, convention, procedure and rules is a threat to the control that she needs. The article continues stating, the reporting of their renovations was just part of the abusive press coverage, the sort of headlines and allegedly true news items that led to the decline in her mental health. Revision of history. Pity play. The couple figured if the tabloids felt free to attack them under the guise of public interest, or are they not attacking them based upon her behaviours, because their lives were taxpayer funded, then they should just remove taxpayer funding from the equation, she explains. Assertion of control. They suggested to the firm that they be allowed to work, still on behalf of the monarchy, and make their own money. Then maybe all the noise would stop, Harry's wife says of their reasoning. It then explains why they decided to go, and they were apparently willing to go anywhere. Canada, I'm sure Canada would have got sick of them eventually. New Zealand, well, they were all cheesed off. South Africa, we've got to be having a laugh now after the recent comments, of course. And talks about where they might have gone to. The interviewer then moves on to report the fact that she was complaining that other people were basically allowed to check out of the royal family. I'm not sure who she's referring to, they're not named, but they weren't allowed. The interviewer picks it up thus. Why do you think that is? I ask. Why do you think that is? She says right back with a side eye that suggests I should understand without having to be told. All right, Harry's wife, I'll bite. It could be that the very reasons she was considered a breath of fresh air at first, and then a supernova, biracial, divorcee, self-made millionaire, I'm not sure about that, clothes horse, only highlighted the ways in which the monarchy was becoming irrelevant to a younger generation, and worse, the ways that it was deeply flawed and racist. To that, it could be just because she's black, or because it's owed to the fact that Harry's wife, who jokes that even my blood type is A positive, wouldn't relinquish control over her own image, and that image had the potential to be too big of a brand. Maybe, as Harry battled on her behalf with the tabloids, one stern statement after another, it was all becoming too eerily reminiscent of Princess Diana, no, Diana, Princess of Wales. Or maybe it's because by the time she met and married Harry, she was already a fully formed American woman. Self-made? No, she wasn't. Self-refined? No. She had desires and goals and a fan base. And while she was a fine actress, the job she is best at is envisaging a life for herself and getting it. In other words, of course, my observation is that her narcissism always drives her onwards and upwards. Somebody else describes it as envisaging a life for herself and getting it. That specific type of very American ambition just isn't really compatible with being a princess. But it's not necessarily an American ambition. Not everybody who American subscribes to that point of view. This is where the mistake is being made. Yes, there is something of the American culture of self-improvement, self-help, self-betterment, and the idea of the pursuit of happiness and social mobility. But not everybody in the United States is ambitious. There are many people who lack ambition. There are many people who are content with what they've got, and they realise they don't need too much. The point is, the interviewer makes the mistake of thinking that American ambition is what she's exhibiting. It is not. It is her narcissism. The article continues. Though it is compatible with her current life, which seems to be the best of all worlds, a palace in a better climate, still culturally considered royalty, while having freedom from the royal family, a level of celebrity that exceeds what she could have gotten through Suits or the Tig, a neighbour with mini pigs. Well, I can't put words in your mouth, I say instead. Accordingly, the interviewer refused to be drawn in the context of that exchange, but providing some observations thereafter, not all of them wholly accurate. You can see, however, that Harry's wife continues to use this platform to try and throw pelters at the royal family, that she engages in the self-pitying victimhood that has become her calling card. We'll park it there to enable you to disinfect your ears and to take some breaths of delicious, cool, fresh air, purging that icky sensation you have at having to listen to whatever it is that she's pumping out of her cake hole. And we'll pick up what happens next. But in the meanwhile, your enduring image, no doubt, is of the fact that Harry's wife and Harry are salt and pepper pots. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.